Hey,
Sure.
what's up, everybody? We're just doing conversations in wrestling, and we're just talking about bullshit essentially with Gary J. So, how are you?
I am doing pretty good. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I got no complaints. I got food on my table. I have some beer. I have some alcohol. And, the only problem is that WrestleMania is going to have a zero attendance at the moment.
Oh man, it's so weird and interesting to me, but like it's funny because they're shutting Orlando down on Thursday, so it's almost like Vince got like the inside track, obviously, and that's why they had to tape everything.
Yeah, it's weird in which that I don't know how familiar you are, and I don't know, obviously, just to fill everybody else in on this, we have a little thing in the world called this coronavirus. I don't know if anybody heard
Oh,
about it. It's just
didn't know.
new trend,
Yeah,
right?
it's trending on Twitter right now.
So I don't know. It's weird because there's all these meetings. So we're talking about WrestleMania, and for those who don't know, WrestleMania was canceled, and sort of, or it's now being taped in a zero attendance. And there's all this weird stuff going on with Florida where they were like delaying the meetings about that. So it's like it's bizarre.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like everybody's like, oh, they're taping everything during the week, and now I'm like, oh, they're taping everything during the week because they knew Orlando was going to be shut down.
Yeah, it's so bizarre, and I don't even know like how to feel about this because I don't remember anything in my time, and I'm 27, and you're a little bit older than me. Anything like this in wrestling or pop culture or any event. I mean, the longest thing that I remember was like being isolated for 4 days in a snowstorm.
Oh yeah, I mean the only thing I could think of was like snowstorms were like the thing, but that would be like a couple days to a week. We're at the point now where like the crazy thing about this whole situation is we really don't have a end period per se. Like we don't have a time frame.
Yeah, and I don't know, you're a professional wrestler and all these indie events got canceled. So, how is that affecting you given that your profession has been essentially postponed and there was the collective or collection that was supposed to go on and that's why we're kind of talking about wrestling. So,
I mean, it sucks, man. I mean, obviously it's a way I pay my bills and put food on my table and feed my two beautiful furry kittens as one sleeps right next to me. Uh, But like, it's one of those things where I have no control over it, and I completely understand why these shows are being canceled. And a lot of places have been really cool, like Black Label Pro and Bloodsport, who just canceled. Not Bloodsport. I place in Jersey that just canceled their show today, actually. But everybody's been very professional and like either said, "Hey, we can still pay you" or whatnot. So like, places have been really cool about it, and like really all I can do is I got myself a job. I just went to the grocery store today and picked up a job there, and I'll work there until things pick up again. So you got to do what you got to do.
and so given that the money situation is one thing, and I kind of want to back out away from that for a second and talk more about just from a performance standpoint, because I like the podcast, I like to do panels. I just received the cancellation and I'm not getting paid, but I'm very prideful about presenting at the start of
Yeah,
May, and I just got canceled on that. And I understand
yeah,
it's a little bit different when you're getting paid versus not paid, but how are you being affected and how does that affect you given that you can't perform? Because forgetting about money for a second, I would imagine that it's really hard to go from people cheering your name and being in the ring and really working and putting on some amazing matches.
yeah. I mean, it sucks. I mean, that's one of the worst things. Is obviously like you have the money situation, but at the same time, the other side of that is, to me, I feel I'm a natural performer regardless. Like so even if I wasn't getting paid to do this, I would find a way to entertain regardless and like not be able to entertain people and like tell your story or like, paint a picture as people would say, like, yeah, it sucks. Like everything's on hold right now. It's just like this bizarro land.
And so you're in the middle of semi stories. You're supposed to have a match with Warhorse coming for his title, and there's a long history between the two of you. And also, you were coming off of, I think, the strongman style, and you had an amazing match with Planet Williams, who was on my podcast, and Daniel Makabe. So, what is that like to go from really a high point and putting on these amazing matches and several matches with Aaron Williams of all people? And he's a great performer. He's a great guy as well. And then to just
No, yeah,
sort of
totally.
be like deadlock and nothing's going on.
It's boring, man. Like the worst thing is like I get stir crazy. It's like it's almost like a cartoon where like you're always like, oh man, like what if this changed and I didn't have this to do? So now like I'm just going walking around sitting at the park feeding the ducks like a fucking 85-year-old man because I don't really know what to do with my time.
So, yeah. And how do you feel that wrestling is going to be affected with this? Because clearly this is unprecedented. All these indie promotions, which go support indie, whether that's indie promotions as a whole, like St. Louis Anarchy or Black Label Pro, which were mentioned, or support independent wrestlers, Gary J. So, how do you feel that wrestling is just going to be impacted collectively? Because we started this off with WrestleMania, and I kind of want to bring it back that way.
um, really big actually, because like with the economy being affected, we don't know how long the economy is going to be affected. And then when things get better and events start happening, people might not have that extra money to go to said wrestling show. So like it affects everything across the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I feel that it's with cons because I'm in a very different sector where I'm a big pop culture fan of anime and comic cons, and that's one of my biggest concerns is that, and I know it's a little bit different than wrestling, is that those are expenditures, and when times are tough, people back out of that, and
Yep.
so how do you feel that that's going to even just affect how events are run for the rest of 2020, and how do you feel that's going to affect because a lot of these promotions have 8 or 9 events going on. And how do you feel that that's going to affect that component of it?
I honestly think like obviously I think the rest of the month shows are off the table, and I would even say most shows in April, if not all shows in April, are off the table. So now you're looking at maybe May, and May still might be too early to even say. So like you're possibly not running a show till July or June. So like that messes a lot of stuff up with storylines. That messes up a lot of like if you fly in talent, you've already bought flights. So obviously you're fucking fist fighting the airlines because obviously that's a monstrosity in itself right now. So like the whole world of professional wrestling is just a small blip on the radar that is the United States right now when it comes to just the economy. Like that's our side of it because we're involved in like wrestling and anime and comic books and stuff like that. But like the economy overall is going to be affected for a long time without this going on in wrestling. Now you put wrestling on top of that, like it's affected even more. So like there's a lot of people affected by this, and that's just in our community.
And to even talk just about WrestleMania and Raw and SmackDown and NXT, and I'm curious your opinion because you're more in this than I am. I mean, I'm a fan, I'm a spectator, I interview wrestlers, but how do you think that WWE is going to be affected, or AEW, or even Impact, which are sort of, and I say this trying not to be offensive, but they're sort of major promotions that are not on the indie level, but they are major promotions. How do you feel that they're going to be affected with all this stuff from a professional wrestling standpoint?
Um, it's funny because I'm watching AEW Dynamite right now. They're doing the location in Florida they did last week. They're just doing the empty arena thing too. Um, it's just like anything else. Like they're part of the economy, and like you said, if they're just an extra expense that someone can't afford once things go back to normal, that's totally going to affect the houses or the draws or like money coming in for merch. So like it's just such a bizarre thing to think about. Like you're going to have a WrestleMania this year that feels like honestly like a studio taping with no people. It feels like practice. It's just so weird.
I agree in which that so for me, I've actually been taking a break from wrestling where I was gearing up since last December, going on a big Twitter jump, and you've retweeted me a bunch of times, and a lot of wrestlers have, and I've been wrestling very heavy on my podcast, and my
Yeah.
entire position from social media has been gear up all the way into WrestleMania and then after WrestleMania take a breather. But like now as a fan, like I'm so demotivated, and
Yeah.
it's a weird feeling for me because I'm not even viewing it as practice. I'm viewing it as a house show to some degree that's just being taped and hyped up with a bunch of t-shirts.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I can completely see that. But even house shows are like super fun. Like you watch a couple of every arena shows and you're like, oh, that was cool. But then you're like, you watch two or three of them, and then you're not gonna watch a fourth or fifth because it's just okay. Like the crowd interaction with these shows is a major part for me, and like if it's not there, it's like it just misses that extra magic.
Yeah, and also it's like the biggest event. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to debate that WrestleMania is the pinnacle wrestling event. It's the flagship. It's kind of the go home show that gets all these other people involved in wrestling.
Oh yeah,
And
it's to
that's
me it's a holiday.
I mean that's what I'm concerned about is that I'm concerned about even just the branding of wrestling is going to be so I don't want to say tainted because I think it'll recover, but I feel like for the last like 5 years we've been in like this platinum age of wrestling where it's just gone up and up and up and up, and I know people bitch about Raw and SmackDown and even a little bit of AEW, but I feel like it's just gotten so much better. I feel like this is going to be like sort of like a nail and the coffin of the downcline for a while. I don't know how you feel about
It I would agree. Like I would definitely say this is like wrestling was starting to kind of go back to a really good era of like everything's really cool. There's so many choices to watch. Like there's a little bit of everything for everybody. Like you have AEW like killing it. Like I've enjoyed a lot of their shit, and obviously a lot of WWE programming people bitch and moan about, but I still enjoy it because I just watch it. Go, that was cool. That was fun, and like with WrestleMania, for example, is like some of the matches I'm like, man, the bill's been really good for this, and then these performers have to go out there in front of nobody. Like, so wrestling is definitely going to be affected by it. Wrestling is definitely going to like take a hit for a while. Like, it'll recover because I think as just take a while. So we might not really see a recovery period from this until maybe fall, if not winter. It might be longer. It just depends.
I mean, I agree, and I think that the real recovery is that I think that WWE and AEW and companies like Impact, and I love Impact Wrestling because I think they have some of the best storytelling right now. I think those companies are going to recover a lot faster than the indies, and I
Oh,
think,
absolutely.
and I think I'm a big fan of Primetime Wrestling. I'm from DC, and they just had arguably one of the best shows in March, and it was
Yeah.
Butch vs. Gore. And if you haven't seen that on IWTV, I mean, I recommend that you go check that out because I think that was one of the best shows in all of March. And it was at the beginning of March, and it kind of just skated by when this thing was starting, and
Yeah.
it was amazing. And so I don't know how fast the indies recover because I think that that's where sort of the heart and soul of wrestling lies in many ways. And in many ways, I find that St. Louis Anarchy and places like Black Label Pro and Freelance, on many regards, are better than Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or NXT, and sometimes they're even better than AEW to some degree. So, what's your feel on that?
Um, I definitely think obviously the bigger companies that you see on TV are good. They'll bounce back a lot quicker. But I mean, it just depends who's running the ship when it comes to what indie company you're talking about. Like obviously, I have a very big stake in St. Louis Anarchy, so I kind of know a lot of the backstage stuff or pull the curtain away kind of thing. But like if anybody has any common sense right now, they're planning for the future. In like the future's not a month or two away. The future's like, okay, this is going to affect wrestling for a while. So we need to either cut costs or plan accordingly money wise, because if there's no money coming in, these companies aren't going to run. If there's no way to build a revenue, your shows aren't going to happen. So like, and you got to also understand with the economy going to shit, which it probably will, people aren't going to have that extra money to throw around like they used to because things were going back and they were going well. So if someone's not working, they're not going to spend their money on a show they would usually go to. So if anybody has any common sense in their promoter or a booker or helping run a professional wrestling company, you should also really know that like okay, like right now is a great time just to give away free content and entertain people. Do what you're supposed to. Entertain. That's the whole point of this. So like you're not worried about running a live show or promoting what your live show is going to be. If you have a live area, be like, okay, here's a YouTube match, here's some wrestling interviews, anything you can do to keep the people involved and entertained, and pretty much make them feel that, you know what, like, yeah, I can't go to live shows, but I'm still a part of the show because they actually care to still entertain me, because I'm also going through a bad time because like I can't go to work every day because of this whole coronavirus thing. So now at least I have something to do at home.
And to even further talk about that, I mean, what do you even feel that giving away free content, and obviously a lot of companies were trying to do empty arena shows, and a lot of that's now starting to get cut down. So what is it like to start throwing stuff out on YouTube and doing interviews and really, I guess, making sure that fans know that you guys still exist as wrestlers and the promotions that you're a part of still exist? And what are you doing to kind of get that out a little bit?
I mean, all I can do is like I've been brainstorming just to think about ways, as stupid as it sounds, to stay relevant in this time of like boredom. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do is just promote. Hey, like this company's cool, or this is what I've done, and obviously a lot of the anarchy stuff I help with. So like we're just brainstorming with ideas of like, okay, how do we entertain people and not patronize them and constantly beg for money? Because obviously it's good for the fans to donate, and I'm really happy that the indie world's come together and like really helped each other and donated money and bought shirts and all that stuff. But to me, eventually that money's going to dry up if nobody's really working. So it's kind of like, okay, save your money for now. I get it. Like you donate, that's great. But now maybe we just entertain you, and this is your time just to sit down and relax and not worry about anything.
And let's talk a little bit about you as a brand, where people can find you, YouTube stuff, as well as St. Louis Anarchy, and just even talk a little bit about St. Louis Anarchy in case people don't know that promotion. What is like the tagline, and what is St. Louis Anarchy about? Because they have a bunch of stuff on IWTV, and
Oh
let's
yeah.
talk a little bit about that. Because a really good way,
Basically,
a good way how to give money, and if you have a IWTV account right now, one of the ways is, from my understanding, is that you can go watch wrestling, and the more that people watch, the more those promotions get.
oh, totally, yeah. So, like, if you have an IW.TV subscription, all you have to do is look up St. Louis Anarchy, and then any show you watch, we get a cut of that money, or we get a percentage. So, like, anything like that helps. If you have YouTube capabilities, subscribe to St. Louis Anarchy's YouTube page, because we're really trying to build that up in our time off, kind of. So, like, I think we're up to like 200 and something subscribers. So, like, the more subscribers we have there, the better. We're putting new matches up from past shows every day. We're trying to get more content up there every day. And then as a Twitter, I think it's at St. Louis Anarchy. Follow us on Twitter. There's usually updates constantly about just what's going on. And we're very honest and open with the people. We always say, like, this is what's happening. This is why it's happening. Like, we had to cancel our March 28th show, which would have been, what is that, Saturday? And then we also canceled our May 1st show because we just honestly don't feel that things are going to be healthy for people and safe for people to go out in the world even by May 1st, which I know is a month away, but like the way it sounds is things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. So we kind of want to be on the front end of that and not promote a show just to cancel it.
And I do want to talk about one show, which is the Strong Style, and I think this is going to be a selling point. And I don't want to ruin too much, but you had three amazing matches against some of the toughest competitors, and one of them was Aaron Williams from Planet Williams, as well as a great match against Daniel Makabe. And if you know anything about Aaron Williams or Daniel Makabe, those two wrestlers are amazing, and you had two amazing matches against them, and it's well worth the watch. If you haven't
Oh,
seen
totally.
that show, if you haven't witnessed it, the entire show in and of itself, Kurt Stallion was on that show, and several others that you can name as a selling point. It was one of the best shows, and it almost didn't happen, from my understanding, or wasn't almost live streamed.
Yeah, it almost didn't get live streamed because the internet at the Spalding Hall wasn't strong enough, but it got taken care of like the day of. But like it was a big miscommunication basically, and then in the end it ended up being live stream. And as of right now, February 21st was St. Louis Anarchy's last live show since this whole coronavirus started. And like there's me on that show. There's Eric Stevens on that show, Daniel McCabe, Aaron Williams, Thomas Shire, Kurt Stallion, Jake Durden, who like a lot of people kind of know who he is, but don't. He's a guy, in my opinion, that gets slept on, if that's even a thing nowadays. But like Jake Durden, like he's on a lot of the Journey Pro stuff and St. Louis Anarchy stuff and Zero One stuff, USA on IW.TV. So definitely look up Jake Durden. He's a freaking monster and he's phenomenal. He actually trained over in Noah for a while too, which a lot of people didn't know about, which is like huge in my opinion. So definitely Jake Durden's a guy to check out. But yeah, like St. Louis Anarchy's last live show was the Strong Style tournament, or I think it was In Your Hall Strong Style, because we were going to do a whole series of tournaments over the year, but that got switched around.
And that's one way how to support it. Now, how do people support you independently? Because you got the big vet violence stuff going on, and that's a shirt, and your Twitter handle is what again, as well as other social media you're on. And how can people just stay in contact with you, or follow you, or support you in this?
It, if you want to support me at all during this time, really, all you got to do is check me out on Twitter at StiffRoboGinger. Like, to me, supporting, if you just want to strike up a conversation with me or just like tell me how your day is going, because at this point, like, a lot of people are down and out and they're kind of, they got the blues per se or depressed because a lot of things that they enjoy have stopped and like a lot of people aren't working. So, I mean, to me, trying to stay positive and motivating during this time is probably one of the biggest things. And if I can use my Twitter or any of my F-list celebrity, D-list celebrity knowledge, I can kind of just stay on that level and use this as a platform to entertain people. So that's always the thing at Stiff Robo Ginger on Twitter. Or if you just want to check me out and maybe purchase one of my shirts, I have a couple designs. Just check out at Fully Gimmicked on Twitter or fullygimmicked.com. They take care of all my shirts. You can order my shirts there. They have a great selection. They're really cool to deal with. They're a company out of Florida. Zach and Luna are the two that run that company. They're awesome and phenomenal. So definitely give at Philly Gimmick to follow on Twitter. And at Facebook, just at Gary J or Gary J is my Facebook. And anything St. Louis Anarchy related or anything Black Label related or Journey Pro related, or I've kind of been everywhere at this point. So just check out Gary J on IW.TV and continue to support independent wrestling.
And then the final question I want to ask you is, how are your cats handling this? Because you do practice vet violence. You are Catterday approved. And I think that's the real question we all want to know.
My cats probably don't give a rat's ass. They're happy that I'm home a little more. So like they're not as Gary depraved as they could be because sometimes my schedule gets really busy and I'm gone for a couple days. But they're pretty happy right now. Nothing's affected them directly, so everything's good and golden here with the old kittens.
Well, thank you for doing this. Obviously, this is meant to promote wrestlers. The idea, just so everybody's aware as this goes up, is to continue to do a bunch of these short interviews to just talk about wrestling, talk about what's going on, give a lot of support to people, give people platforms that you might not know where to follow them and things like that. So please go follow Gary J if you already don't follow him. Buy a shirt if you have extra money. Definitely follow him on Facebook, follow IWTV. If you don't have an account and you can afford it right now, definitely do it because I do agree that things are going to get slightly worse than better. And I believe IWTV is $100 for the entire year, and there's so much content up there. So I definitely recommend that if you're bored and you want a lot of content and you want to watch a lot of indie wrestling, that's a really good way how to distract yourself. And if you can afford it, definitely do it. And again, and it just doesn't apply to St. Louis Anarchy, but it applies to a lot of other companies that whatever shows you watch, they get a percentage
Oh,
of that.
absolutely. I mean,
And
it helps tremendously.
it's a passive way how to support. And you're going to be entertained and you're not going to go out of your mind. So
Yeah.
please go if you can afford it. Please do it because this is the time. And I have a feeling that if you're a wrestling fan, you won't regret it.